Hello and a warm welcome once again to the Stackers Hotel in Blackpool as we take you to the quarter-final stages of the World 8-Ball Pool Championships for 1998. We've already had some great pools so far. We already know one of the semi-final places as the world champion Rob McKenna will take on Keith Brewer. But coming up is our next quarter-final, and that sees the Fox, Lee Kendall, up against Craig Reynolds. There's the scores from the other quarter-finals. Rob McKenna going 9-3 over Philip Grundy. And then Keith Brewer, the England captain, 9-5 over the Irishman Robert Brady. Jason Twist and Carl Morris of England to come, but our match now is Lee Kendall up against Craig Reynolds. Two Midlanders, and a man with me, Tony Holgate, knows both these players very well indeed. And first of all, Tony, you know, we mentioned before that Craig Reynolds is a relatively new boy to this sort of stuff, and so too was Robert Brady. Robert Brady didn't get the start he wanted in his quarter-final, and he was always chasing poor old Keith Brewer. Is it going to be the similar sort of situation, do you think?
I think, yes, it will be. I think it's very important that Craig Reynolds gets in early against Lee Kendall. A lot of people have seen Lee play before. He's been a world finalist before. Craig, he's had to play 10 matches as a pre-qualifier to come this far. It is important because it's Craig's first game on television. He gets in early.
You played Craig in the last Stackers International match. What's his game like?
Oh, he's a superb player. The emphasis on his game is potting. He's a very, very big potter. I had a tight game with him in the last 32 at the Stackers of Bradford, which I won 8-7. But Craig is a very, very accomplished player. Lee
Kendall had a cracking match to get to the quarterfinals. Obviously, we've shown what kind of a player he can be.
Well, I mean, his last 16 game, he played Quintin Han. He was 7-3 down there. It just shows the character of the man. He actually came back and won that game 8-7. It's incredible stuff from Lee Kendall. So you are saying then that you think Lee's probably odds-on for the semi-final place? I'd say Lee Kendall was the favourite, but don't count out Craig Reynolds because the man can pot. All right. Well, let's take a look at both the players we've got coming up in our next quarter-final, starting with the Fox himself, Lee Kendall. Age 28, and as Tony just mentioned, he's been a finalist last year in this event, so he knows what it's all about, and of course was the champion of the Stackers International Masters in 1997. So Lee Kendall's been around the block, he knows about it. But what about this man, also from the Midlands? This is his first time at this level and a pre-qualifier, and as Tony mentioned, he's had a lot of matches to get here, and I think he's really just pleased to be here and enjoying the atmosphere of it all. Earlier this afternoon, he walked into the stadium for the first time and really got quite a shock to see the setup here, but he's really looking forward to it. Well, I did get a chance to talk to both the players before they headed out for this particular match. I first of all spoke to Lee Kendall and asked him if he could win the whole tournament, just what it would mean to him.
Oh, it'd be a massive step forward. I've won big tournaments, but to win the ultimate, there would be the icing on the cake.
Can you do it?
I can do it, definitely.
So very confident Lee Kendall there. What about Craig Reynolds from Telford? This is the first time under the big lights. What are his chances?
I always believed I can get this far, and I always believed I can get to the television stages. And then after that, anything can happen, as I say. So we'll just see how it goes. I mean, I'm the new dog here, you know, the new boy. So just looking forward to it. Just got to go and enjoy it.
So the new dog against the wily old Fox should be another cracking quarter-final. Let's go down to the floor for another foxy man himself, Alan Hughes.
Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan. Ladies and gentlemen, your referee for the match is Jason Davis, and the match is between a young man, 27 years of age, who has won 11 matches to reach the quarter-final, defeating former world champion Greg Farron along the way, and his all-out attacking game is ideally suited to the big occasion. And his opponent today, last year's beaten finalist and seeded number 3 this year, is a regular member of the England team, and he was involved in one of the great outstanding matches in defeating Quintin Han in the last round. Ladies and gentlemen, together, will you welcome please Craig Reynolds and Lee the Fox Kendall.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First frame, Lee Kendall's break.
So, will the big dog be chasing the fox? Pull up the most comfortable chair in the house, get yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy this, our third quarterfinal here in the Embassy World Pool Championship. The Fox, Lee Kendall, just breaking off here to get things started, up against Craig Reynolds. Now, we've been warned about Craig Reynolds. He likes to go for his shots. Don't blink or you might miss a few.
Red ball's in play.
Waste little time. Very attacking by nature. Another one of the relative outsiders that have forged their way through to this quarterfinal. We won't be happy with the way the whites finished there, directly over top the yellow on the intended red. That's going to make this one much more difficult than he would have liked. But this, a battle of left-handed cues. Didn't intend the pot, just trying to lay it over the corner pocket because there were no positional rewards from that. Once again, another look. Fully intended that miss. Now Lee Kendall, a beaten finalist in this event last year, would dearly love to go one better this year. He's alive and kicking in this quarterfinal. It's a best of 17, a race to 9 frames.
Seconds.
Great shot, that one from Lee Kendall. Lee also one of the main stalwart players on the English team. Another look at the double here. Safely deposited into the corner pocket. And who better to evaluate these two English players than my guest joining me in the commentating booth here for this match, Keith Brewer. And Keith, you've already found a path through to the semifinals. You're going to be up against Rob McKenna, the defending champion, in the top half of the draw here. Lee is bidding to be the third member to join you in the semifinals, but this has to be a tough one to call. On paper, Lee looks favorite, but you can't discount Craig Reynolds.
No, I think you've just summed it up just about right. On paper, Lee is, I would say, easily the favourite. But Craig's one of these players. He isn't kind of the most consistent player in the world, but when he has his day, he can beat just about anyone, and Lee's well aware of that. Really, if Craig's going to have a mainstay in this match, he doesn't want to fall behind too quickly. He needs to stay with Lee. Going into the interval, he wants to be there, either in the lead or just a frame or two behind.
You, along with McKenna, two of the favorites in the first two quarterfinals. Kendall bidding to become the third favorite going through to the semis. Now, Rob McKenna predicted earlier that there would be an upset in one of the 4 quarterfinal matches.
Did he happen to say which one then, Jim?
He didn't get off the fence that much.
Well, I would say, I mean, having been one of Lee's best friends, obviously I know his potential, and I also know Craig's because he's one of our fellow professionals. But I would fully expect Lee to come through this, not just because of his actual potting play and his game, just that I just know how much he wants to win this event.
And he always does well in this event too. He's one of the players that has risen to the occasion, found the form, and he's always been a tough player here in the Embassy.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have certain events where you always seem to do well and play well. I must admit, when he was playing Quintin Ann in the last 16, I did think he was gone. But he played a remarkable comeback in that match.
Won't be happy with that one.
Well, these middle pockets,
when you're actually stunning them in, you've got to be very, very accurate. When I was playing, Jim, I noticed it, and there was a black that I'd missed into the middle pocket where I tried to roll it in, where really I wanted to play it with a little bit more force. But when you're aware that the pockets aren't, you know, that generous, you tend just to alter your stroke a little bit. Lee probably played the shot correctly, but I mean, played it with that much pace, it's easier to miss. Now this situation here, obviously now once Craig's got his chance, it's very, very important that Craig takes this. There is no real difficulty in finishing the game, but it's very, very important he finishes this now. He's got to punish Lee every time he makes a mistake.
Well, he's got just a tricky little pot here into the middle pocket, or the long red to the bottom left. Well, this might not have made his job any easier if he's blocked the bottom right pocket for the 8-ball. We'll know in a minute if it passes. Well, there you can see, had a full pocket, but Craig Reynolds, as one might expect in his television debut, a little edgy.
Well, it doesn't really matter, Jim. I mean, whether you're edgy or not, there's absolutely no excuse for a miss like that.
Doubtful whether he'll get another chance in this one.
No, no way.
This 8. Lee Kendall first to open accounts in this quarterfinal. He leads Craig Reynolds by 1 frame to 0.
Second frame, Craig Reynolds to break, trailing 1 frame.
Craig said he wanted to go out and enjoy himself. Well, the best way to enjoy yourself is to play well. One of the few players that employs a break cue.
Open table.
You can see him just changing back to his playing cue there, obviously not wanting to damage the playing cue with the break shot. A heavier cue, wider dimensions at the tip.
He's actually using an American pool cue there, Jim. I mean, I'm using a break cue, which is more like a snooker type cue, but Craig actually is using an American cue, which is got more weight into the butt, so he can actually get a more powerful break.
Regardless, he didn't pot anything off the break, so it's an open table for Lee Kendall, choosing the more difficult yellow ball because they lay a little better.
I think you may have been having a laugh with us there, Jim, because I was looking and I thought, well, surely he's going to go reds. Sometimes when you're playing one of the early frames in a match, you always feel like you want to take on one of the longer shots, because obviously if you make it, it gives you that little bit of confidence for the rest of the match. And whether that was just going through his head just for a minute.
Useful little shot there, developing the red on the right-hand side of the table. You can see here, once again, nicely played from Lee Kendall. Now all remaining 5 reds in potable positions. He's going to need to pull a good one out of the bag here.
Sorry, Jimmy, I was just going to say it's not the best shot in the world there. He needed really just to miss the yellow there, so he could take it up for the remaining reds. Well, that's a good recovery ball.
Superb shot, retrieving the position for Lee Kendall. Young player from England, Mick Hill, one to watch in the future.
Definitely played him in the last 16, only beat him on the deciding frame. During one point in the actual match, I think there was something like 4 or 5 8-ball break finishes by us. The standard was very high, but yeah, he's only 18 years old, and I'm sure he's got a great future.
As does the man at the table, Lee Kendall. 8 to the bottom left. And the Fox is running in front. Lee Kendall now leading Craig Reynolds by 2 frames to 0. It's a race to 9. Kendall off the mark.
Third frame, Lee Kendall to break, leading 2 frames to 0.
I know running from the front is very important, Jim, if you can get a big lead on your opponent, you know.
Well, then you can afford a few mistakes that might creep in. You can still pull yourself together. But the one thing that I have noticed with 8-ball pool here is when the chances present themselves,
red and yellow balls potted.
You've got to take them, because you can be shut out for long periods of time. Another look at the break. Red into the right center. Open table for Lee Kendall.
Red balls in play.
Well, he's got a little bit of work to do this time. He's taking the reds because they're the best tactical advantage anyway, and we can see straight away he's quite happy just to, well, he meant to leave that over the pocket. You can see the disappointment on his face. If that ball had stayed over the pocket, of course, he would have had complete control of that side of the table. Just sometimes when you break off, if you get 2 or 3 bunches, sometimes, you know, if you can get on the right suit, it's just worth putting 1 or 2 over the pockets, putting your opponent under pressure. It's no good looking for a finish if it's not really there.
Well, you can see Craig Reynolds in the background, standing. To me, he looks a nervous player.
And that's not a bad shot there for anyone that's wondering what Lee's actually up to. He's actually moved the red over so that when he pockets the red into the middle pocket, he will actually develop the red that was tied up with the yellow. And that's a great shot from Craig. Can't tell if he's completely covered the pocket, but he needed to get that shot right.
Judged the pace nicely, a little harder, and that yellow would have dropped, and that wasn't what he intended.
It was very important he got that shot right there, Jim. If that had dropped in, he'd have been in a fair bit of trouble. Now, if this red doesn't go past the yellow into the top right-hand pocket, what might be a good shot is if Craig actually pots the red over the bottom left-hand pocket, plays a tactical foul, just screws the white in behind the other red. That would be quite a good shot at the moment. Sometimes when you're in a little tactical game like this, you've got to look for the opportunities to do so and try and make your opponent play.
30 seconds.
Well, by the way he's played that shot, I'm pretty sure the red must have passed.
Foul. 2 visits.
Well, Lee is taking your advice at the opposite end of the table, Keith.
Well, it's a great shot. It was the right shot. And I think really, to be quite honest, I think Craig should have done that down on the bottom left-hand red. But he still has the opportunity to do so. What he could actually do here is clip off. Now, what he could do is play the yellow in the centre of the table down onto the red and leave it over the pocket. That would be a very good shot at this stage. And if Craig doesn't start playing these kind of shots in this tactical exchange, then Lee will definitely do it and he will have the upper hand.
Foul. 2 visits.
Well, he had kind of the same idea, but that was the wrong shot. He wanted to leave that one tied up.
Didn't have to give 2 visits away. Could have done it with the yellow in the center, as you suggested.
Yeah, he's not played the right option there. What he's actually done is he's developed the bad red on the side rail. So all he's got to do now is bring this red into play at the top, which he will now do.
Second visit.
Now he has complete control of the table. Well, that was a bit of a nothing shot there from Lee. I think he was just trying to play it up to the pocket, not got under it enough. No harm done really. Craig's still in an awful lot of trouble. But the way he's played that, he may decide here to play the black onto the yellow, onto the red. And I think that's what he's going to do.
Foul. 2 visits.
Not good, I'm afraid. It's a good shot to a degree, but the problem is, obviously he's given Lee 2 visits. The black will pass past the yellow into the pocket. So now all Lee has to do is bring this one bad red into play. Now he's going to... He may decide to do it straight away. The white is in a good position. He's going to have to take rely on a little bit of luck here as he plays the shot.
Second visit.
Well, I wouldn't say that Lady Luck has smiled on him too much there. Nothing easy available. But as you said, that 8 ball does pass, and that was the one thing that Craig Reynolds wanted to guard against. Good recovery shot, though. That certainly affords him the opportunity now to try and take the frame here.
Go on, man. Go on, Craig.
Well, that should cost him the frame.
It's a bad miss. Let's get that bit sorted straight away. But I think he only had to roll that ball in there, Jim, because he could have just took the red into the opposite corner and the black was over the pocket. Maybe getting a little bit carried away. You know, he's got the lead. We all do it. We've all been there. But the one thing he has done is give Craig a little opportunity. He's back in the game, and he'll feel a lot better for it.
The simple 8. So the match is on. Craig Reynolds takes his first frame of this quarterfinal. He still trails Lee Kendall by 2 frames to 1 in this race to 9.
Fourth frame, Craig Reynolds to break.
Breaking off here in frame 4. The man from Telford.
So I'm sure we're going to see a big break from Craig. He'll put his weight behind this one, and he's got a fair bit of that.
Yellow ball potted.
He's one of the more likeable characters on the professional scene.
Red ball's in play.
Red's in play now for Craig. And certainly a lot of work to do if he wants to try and manufacture a winning position from the way they sit at the moment.
Well, just looking at the way they're tied up around the black ball, I would be surprised to actually see him have a go. Having said that, I've seen him in tournaments have a go from just about anywhere, so he would really be better off just playing this over the pocket. But what do I know anyway, Jim? Not played it very well either.
Well, we do know that Craig Reynolds is trying to get to where you already are, waiting in the semi-finals.
Yellow ball's in play.
The situation very similar for Lee Kendall as he strides to the table now. Yellows not ideally placed for a one-visit win.
Well, there's a fair bit of work to be done here, and looking at the way it's situated, I would be very surprised to see Lee go for this. He can actually play this yellow off the red into the middle and spring the bad yellow into play. But that's a pretty wise shot.
They're playing on a 4.5 foot actually by 8 foot table, which is larger than what these boys played on in the qualifying sections pre-television. And I know I was having a chat with Lee Kendall earlier in the week, and he was saying that he was practicing snooker in preparation for this, which a number of the players have done, assuming of course that they got to the televised stages. But that would afford them the luxury of coming from a 12-foot table down to an 8-foot table, and they thought their potting eye might be a little better.
Well, this is one of the problems that when we come to these stages in a televised tournament, we have to play on an 8-foot table, which is, believe me, it's a lot bigger than what we normally play on. And I know it's caused me a fair few problems in the past, Jim, and I've made no secret of it. But I have actually put in a fair bit of practice myself on an 8-foot table, because I realised that if I didn't, I was going to be struggling every time that I got through, and I think it's benefited me. And what some of the players have been doing, they've been playing on a snooker table which is much bigger than the pool table, so when they actually play on the pool table, of course, they feel very comfortable. And that's what one or two of them have been doing.
Well, certainly the one benefit of an 8-foot table from my experience would be you've got a little bit more room to slide that cue ball in and out of gaps, and the players with a little bit more positional expertise.
Yeah, definitely, Jim, you're right. I think that's one of McKenna's fortes, really, is he's a very good snooker player as well, and he's very happy. Like I've already said, I believe he is the best player I've seen play on an 8-foot table. And you know, once you play him on there, you've got to play very well to beat him.
30 seconds.
There's a situation now facing Craig Reynolds.
Yeah, this red actually just passes into the pocket, so Craig's got a very good opportunity. Oh,
well, Craig had a very good opportunity. A few uncharacteristic misses from him. He came into this with a pretty big reputation for being a very fast, loose player, aggressively minded, and lots of talent in the potting end. And I know that I had a word with Darren Appleton, the winner of the Stackus European Masters in Bradford, and he actually fancied Craig Reynolds to go through here, albeit by a very tight scoreline.
So that's an interesting statement from Darren. The problem with this game is, for Craig to win, he's got to pot well, and he's got to take out his finishes, which at the moment he hasn't done. And Lee, years of experience.
30 seconds.
He plays the complete game. He can play a defensive game, and he can play a good attacking game. And Craig at the moment really is just playing suicide pool, and Lee will be very happy to let him carry on playing like this. I mean, the last thing he wanted to do was spring the black. All he had to do was just make sure he put that red in front of the yellow. Same pocket there for Lee. Obviously not his favourite pocket today. really the miss doesn't make a lot of difference. Lee's in a very comfortable position here.
Craig Reynolds in the earlier rounds disposed of the tournament's number 5 seed Greg Farron, a former Embassy World Champion.
Foul. 2 visits.
But he didn't do it with shots like that.
There wasn't a lot he could do there, to be honest, but he should have put a little bit more thought into it. You don't, you know, you've got to put your opponent under pressure when you can. You can't make it too easy for him. Even if you're in a bad situation, there's always a shot there you can play.
Well, he's still got a second visit, but now things a lot more difficult.
What actually happened here, Jim, is when Craig's given him the 2 shots, he had a very easy out, and he's played the first shot so badly, he's actually put himself in a bit of a situation. I mean, with hindsight there, I thought maybe he should have just rolled that down the cushion. And if it drops, he's still got 2 shots. If it stays over, he's still going to have got the finish. He's got a little bit more work to do this time because of where the yellow has actually settled. So a good positional shot needed. That's a pretty good shot. I'm not sure if he's quite on that.
Well, he's responded to the challenge. Lee Kendall glaring down this last 8 ball into the right center. And with it disappearing, he has restored his 2-frame advantage. He leads Craig Reynolds by 3 frames to 1 in this best of 17 quarterfinal in the Embassy World Pool Championship. Great to have you back here at the Stackis Hotel for the televised stages of the Embassy 1998 World Pool Championships.
5th frame, Lee Kendall to break, leading by 3 frames to 1.
He's going to have to settle within the next couple of frames or he's going to be too far behind. I mean, we've had a couple of very scrappy frames, to be honest, Jim, so far.
Yellow ball passes.
And it's not better, really, when you're playing someone who's missing balls, is there really? You know, it gives you a bit of confidence. I mean, I wouldn't say really Lee has played at his ultimate best so far. And if Lee had been playing, how can I put it, a more experienced player at this stage, I think he'd have been in a bit of trouble by now.
Well, he's enjoying a 3-1 lead at the moment. Stocking the balls here in frame 5. This is Lee's 6th Embassy World Pool Championship, and only once has he failed to get to the later stages. He's been a model of consistency here. Seems to rise to the occasion for this one. And as he says, this would be the final jewel in the crown for him.
Seconds.
Well, he's played that shot very well, as we can see. There's not much room. The reason he was able to get so accurate was because he had just left it perfect straight into the middle, so it's just a little stun shot.
Duly applauded. A real boost of confidence this visit should present. Down goes the 8. Lee Kendall storming through here for a place in the semifinals. Now leading Craig Reynolds by 4 frames to 1.
6th frame, Craig Reynolds to break. Trailing 4 frames to 1.
Reynolds breaking off here, frame 6.
Foul.
It's just not happening for him. He's going to have to try and turn this around
1 visit, open table.
if he's to have any chance at all to get through this one unscathed. Maybe a little aggression in that break.
Yeah, a little frustration. He's letting it out, and well, when you're not playing well, you don't seem to get the luck either. It's one of them, I'm afraid. You can see though that Lee's completely focused. He knows he has his opponent where he wants him.
30 seconds.
Yellow ball's in play.
Yellow's color of choice for Lee. Plays all games really too. He does practice snooker, as we said. He likes American pool, 9-ball. He plays them all very well. But I think this is the one game that might see him over the top. Just having a look to see where he'd like to position the white to attack the yellows nearest the bottom left corner. Right now, Keith, it looks like the yellow nearest the black, just to the right of the black as we look, is available to the bottom right corner pocket. There you can see it is, in fact. That'll make life easier for Lee Kendall.
I've got a feeling Jimmy might have tried to get on it with that shot because he hasn't finished well on the other two yellows. And I've got a feeling he'd play to get on it then and take it out. So now it's plan B for Lee. Well, it has to be said, Jim, this isn't ideal.
Well, the angle that he's got now, he might have to try and go into it and dislodge it and leave it to chance.
It's going to be very, very hard to actually finish on it because the black is obviously protecting it to that pocket. There's not a lot of room. And I think he may have to. He may have to play a cannon. Indeed, that's what he tried.
Just takes one errant shot. And even though Kendall now looking with one yellow left, unless he pulls a rabbit out of his hat here, he's the underdog in this frame.
Well, it's a long way out with that one. Now this is a typical situation, obviously, just looking at the way the reds actually lie at the moment. Craig really does have to do something here. Now he doesn't necessarily have to go straight for the finish, but I'm sure he will. But sometimes when your back's against the wall a little bit, it helps if you just play the odd snooker or the odd tactical shot.
Obviously a little straighter on this red than he would have liked, but as you said, he doesn't have to go for the finish yet.
No, I'm a little bit surprised here what he's doing. I can't quite understand the shot he's played. He's left himself a hard shot. if he was going to pot the ball, it would be better off running the cue ball through, because he had an easy red into the opposite middle. And this is just suicide shot what he's trying here.
And what's more is he's left a path to yellow. I don't think he intended that either. He's going to get another chance.
Well, I have to say it's a very uncharacteristic miss from Lee. I mean, just can't believe he's missed that ball. There was nothing hard about the shot. I think he was kind of in a bit of shock, really. I think he's back at the table. So once again, Craig has another opportunity.
Difficult to see him missing from this one. He's just played on the most difficult red that faced him.
Well, I'll tell you now, he hasn't played it well. It wasn't a hard shot, and the most important thing he had to do there was leave an angle on this red, and he's failed to do it. Now his only option here now is probably to run it through and take the last red into the opposite corner, and that's about as well as he could have played it. Now if he stuns this into the top left, he will have the black into the middle pocket.
Do or die.
And that's a big ball.
A real boost of confidence, that shot for Craig Reynolds. Down goes the 8, and the scoreline a little closer. Craig Reynolds is keeping Lee Kendall firmly in his crosshairs. Well, I'd be interested to know what Jonathan and Tony Holgate have to say about the way this one is progressing.
Well, thank you, Jim. Yeah, certainly Craig Reynolds breathing a little easier there, bringing it back to 4-2. But if he's the new dog, he's certainly having a lot of trouble chasing the fox. And Tony, I mean, really, what has he got to do now to get back into this?
Well, I think really what he's got to do, Jonathan, is to start to make sure his long putts go in the pockets, because at the end of the day, he's been missing far too many of those for my liking.
And is it possible? I mean, I know that games seem to, you know, ebb and flow a little bit. Can he now? He's got a bit more confidence having won that one.
Well, he just pulled out a great shot in his last red there to give him that frame. Like I say, this is not the Craig Reynolds that I'm used to seeing on the pool tour, I'm telling you.
All right, well, it's 4-2 at the moment. Let's get back to the action now with our commentators.
Yes, I have to say Craig Reynolds has really had his opportunities. It's just a matter of whether he's taken them or not.
Now, just quickly looking at this, I mean, Lee's done an awesome break once again, but just look at the way all the balls have spread. I would probably say at a quick glance, yellow's a slightly favourite. It's got lots of power into the break. And this is where normally Craig wouldn't miss. And I think really if he's going to have a chance in this match, these are the kind of opportunities he must make sure he gets.
He's shown flashes of brilliance. Case in point, the last red in the preceding frame. Heaps of pressure on that shot, and he passed that examination with flying colors. But he's got to bring some consistency into his game.
Well, he hasn't played that shot quite as he wanted. I think he played to get onto the yellow that the white is right next to. That has the option of the two balls over the top pockets. The yellows have split very well. That's a good idea what Craig was doing. Played the plant and moved the cue ball over for this one bad yellow that he has.
Just again seeming a little hesitant.
Well, I think what he realises, Jim, that is if he doesn't make this shot, all the reds are there. And once again he's missed it by a long way.
Red ball's in play.
And all the reds are there for Lee.
Didn't play that shot with confidence.
Well, there was nothing there. He really, looking at the situation on the table, he could have gone up and potted the 2 yellows at the top of the table and then come back for the one on the rail, leaving the other yellow to get on the black last. Right, well, looking at that shot, he was pretty wide of the pocket, and I think he's played it off the yellow, because if you look at the 2 reds that were situated at the top of the table, they wouldn't actually pass into the corner pockets. What Lee tried to do was play the red off the yellow into the pocket and clear the pocket, and that's why he was so far away with it. It has to be said at the moment, Jim, I mean, some of the you know, the shots we're seeing are pretty scrappy. You know, they're going for shots and they're quite a long way out with them.
A lack of conviction, it appears to me, from both players.
It's just, once again, I mean, Craig's got 2 or 3 feet to play with there, and once again he's out of position. There's just no excuse for it.
Well, this is the premier event on the 1998 pool calendar. And if you're ever going to get the yips, chances are it's going to be in this one.
Well, all I can say is, how many chances does he want? Once again, he's played a very bad shot.
Cross double. And once again, closer before he hit it. Mind you, it has to be said, new cloth and cushions, throwing very wide.
Yeah,
it takes a little adjustment.
It is playing like that, Jim, at the moment. I noticed it in my match. It was throwing it off slightly, and you've got to realise just what it's doing so you can judge it better.
These scrappy frames do nothing to bolster a player's confidence, but at the end of the day, how big they do read on the scoreline.
Well, this frame's all over now, Jim. Craig's had his opportunity once again.
And no obvious hurdles here for Lee to get over. This is probably his 3rd or 4th bite at the cherry in this frame. And you can't tempt fate too often.
I think this is one of these where he's got to make his mind up exactly what ball he wants to play last before he comes down for the black, and they're all so easy, it's hard to decide. He's walking around, there's that many ways he can pot these 3. It's hard for him to make his mind up. I think what he's going to do, I think he's going to leave the one over the middle till last. But if he's going to do that, it's going to have to be very accurate with the cue ball control. Now, I've just seen him weighing the other one up. Now, the way he's going, he's got to finish the right side of this red. And I don't think he's done it. Very surprised he went that way there, Jim.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he's made this probably as difficult as he could. There you can see the pot that faces Lee Kendall. But the most difficult aspect here is negotiating position to get that cue ball back down for the black.
Yes, he's going to have to play this with plenty of force.
Dead center of the pocket. But when that cue ball is traveling some distance, too many times things can go wrong. A little unfortunate, it has to be said, though. Had it missed that middle bump, would have given him a nice shot at the 8-ball.
Well, what he's actually done there, Jim, he's actually gone for the cut and missed it on the way in. Caught it coming back.
Just about fluked it into the left centre.
Yeah, he's nearly fluked it. And this, of course, is a very potable yellow for Craig. Well, what about that then, Jim? Threw caution to the wind there. Now, we've seen Lee miss about 3 balls into this pocket up the rail.
Foul.
That is a formula for disaster for Craig Reynolds. Well, after such a great yellow, he turns it right over, gift wraps it for Lee Kendall. So the man from Stoke reestablishes a 3-frame advantage. He now leads Craig Reynolds by 5 frames to 2 in this race to 9. We're back with you at the Stackis Hotel for more action in the Embassy Whirlpool Championships. Well, so far, this quarterfinal clash between these two very capable players is going to do nothing to bolster their confidence, whichever one of them goes through to the semifinals.
No,
this might be just a case of forget this one, think about your next one. Either way, the big dog is going to be breaking off here. Frame number 8.
8th frame, Craig Reynolds to break, trailing by 5 frames to 2. Red ball potted.
Well, this is a pretty good break by Craig. He's made a red into the side pocket, so they're pretty well split. He's just got a little bit of work to do. I'm pretty sure he's going to take the reds, but he's just got the one bad red to deal with. Now, looking at the position they are, that's the bad red there. That's the one problem ball he's got. But these 2 reds at the bottom of the table are quite close to the pockets. So Craig doesn't have to go for a finish here. Well, I think he's going to try and split it straight away. Once again, he's just not cueing well enough, is he, Jim? Just not cueing perfectly.
He's not been favored by Lady Luck. Murphy's Law has come into play a number of times here. But Craig Reynolds has to try and put things right, because Lee Kendall is soon going to be out of sight. And the order will be too tall for Craig Reynolds to try and put right.
That's a little bit careless from Lee there. He's actually tried to cover that pocket. Mace even tried to cover this one. And that's a bit better. Because of the way the reds were actually situated, then he had to cover one of the pockets.
Judged that well, though. Just off the knuckle. I mean, things could have gone wrong there. That was a good shot from Kendall. Certainly gives him the initiative.
He's actually contemplating playing the red onto the yellow then. You could just tell. He's just weighing up the table, because Lee has got a couple of bad yellows down here. Well, that's a funny shot once again. He's just playing too many loose shots here.
Yes, you can see the beads of sweat on Craig Reynolds' forehead. That's due in part to the heat that Lee Kendall has put him under here, and also the mistakes that have crept into his game of his own undoing. Either way, there's a man right now that feels the pressure.
Well, I'm not being funny here, Jim, but these are just nothing shots, and Lee must be loving this, because he's... But this game, you've got to play certain shots to put your opponent under pressure, and Craig just isn't doing it. Really there, he would have had to play somewhere along the line, a deliberate foul, pocket the yellow that's over the pocket. He had 2 reds that he could have played on, and he hasn't done it. And all Lee has to do really is just bring these yellows into play.
Nicely played into the center of the table and in close proximity to a pocket, I'm sure. That's exactly what Kendall was intending.
And also what he's been careful to do is make sure that Craig cannot play a red onto this yellow. He's actually left the cue ball in a certain way, but he can't do it because he realised that really that was Craig's only chance. Well, that's one way of doing it, Jim.
Still doesn't alter the situation too much, though, because Lee doesn't have any yellows over on the left-hand side that the left bottom pocket would be guarding. Lee is really still in control here.
What Lee's got to be careful of is that Craig's next shot will probably be the red onto the yellow to gain both pockets. So really what he has to do is develop this one bad yellow that's on the bottom rail, which he's looking at now.
30 seconds.
Just making sure he's brought that into play.
Really now, sorry Keith. That's just taking that shot away from Craig. If he played the red onto the yellow now, it'd be disaster for him.
One other option he does have here, he could actually play the black over towards these 3 reds and try and tie up the black completely. Because obviously now that Lee can put all of these balls, he has to do something positive.
Well, he played a very aggressive shot there. It looked like he played the billiard, dislodging the difficult red and tried to cannon into the reds and knock the one over the corner pocket in. That would have been some shot if he'd have gotten it. Didn't miss it by a long ways either. And that's not the best shot that you're going to see from Lee Kendall.
I think actually he's played a poor shot there, Jim, but he may just have gone enough. If he can just clip this one into the middle, he will be on the one at the top of the table, near on the rail. You don't expect him to miss it, but he did miss a ball just like this a frame or 2 ago.
You almost called that one correctly, Keith, but as it is, it wiggled its way in, this 8. And the Fox is dictating the pace here. It's a race to 9, this 3rd quarterfinal in the Embassy Whirlpool Championships. He leads Craig Reynolds by 6 frames to 2. Let's rejoin Jonathan Green in the studio.
Thank you, Jim. And certainly Lee Kendall 6-2 up here in this quarterfinal, but really not looking like the same player that was in the finals here last year. And Tony, we've been saying all along, Lee just doesn't look the kind of player we've seen him play before. He's not playing anywhere near the standard he was playing last year in the World Championships. I mean, I've noticed that a lot of the time he's at the table,
He's taken a long, long time over his shots, and I mean, the longer you are looking at the balls, the harder they get.
So he's almost playing against himself?
Well, in a way, yes, I'd say that, yeah.
What about Craig? I mean, he started this tournament, or when we saw at the start of the quarterfinals, said, you know, I've got nothing to lose, I'm comfortable, I'm just going to go out and enjoy it. He's hardly looked as though he's enjoying it, is he?
I don't think he really is enjoying this experience. Obviously a new experience for him, but he really is struggling out there. And I mean, you've seen him miss a lot of shots, and he's tending now to play the wrong shot at times. I think he looks like he wants to go home early.
Yes, you were saying he's rushing it somewhat.
Yeah, he's looking like he's trying to get out of the arena as fast as he can. I'm telling you, this is probably the worst I've ever seen Craig Reynolds play.
Well, Lee's got to obviously play a lot better than that if he wants to go back to the final, isn't he?
Well, if Lee, I mean, I think Lee's now going to go on to win this match, but in his semi-final, if he plays like that, there's no way he's going to be in the final again.
All right, well, it's 6-2 at the moment in our match in the quarterfinals. Lee Kendall leading it. Let's get back to the action now with our commentators.
Leading 6 frames to 2.
So frame 9 sees Lee Kendall breaking off here. And the predominant feeling, certainly for him, has to be one of relief and satisfaction, knowing that he's played far from his best and yet finds himself 4 frames clear at 6-2. Keith, we had a chance to have a quick word with Lee just during the quick mid-session interval leading up to this, the 9th frame here in this best of 17 quarterfinal. Lee felt that it was very off-putting, the fact that Craig has really struggled out there. And he's found trouble finding focus and digging in with concentration.
Yeah, and that often happens, Jim. You know, if you're playing a player who's playing at the top of his game, it means that you have to play at the top of your game, and that's what can happen. What's happening here is Craig is making so many mistakes, careless mistakes, it's actually affecting the way Lee's playing. It's affecting his concentration. And it's making him make mistakes, and that can actually happen.
Well, right now Craig Reynolds in an enviable position given the location of the remaining 3 reds. Dare we say it, he's looking the favorite here. Well, this is a little more like the Craig Reynolds that we've seen.
Yep.
A lightning finish from the man from Telford. Takes the first frame after the interval, pulls one back. It's Lee Kendall 6, Craig Reynolds 3. Welcome back to the beautiful Stackis Hotel in sunny Blackpool for this year's Embassy World Championships.
Craig is really going to have to motor it. And this is what I've seen Craig do this before. You know, sometimes he can just all of a sudden he starts buzzing and he can just reel off 3 or 4 frames before you even realise what's happening. And
trailing 6
well,
frames to
who
3.
knows? As they say, Jim, it's a funny old game.
Red ball potted.
We have seen a number of break-offs where the balls haven't split as kindly as the players might have liked. You can see a lot of action between the balls, but yet there's clusters where the balls have finished that make the outs very difficult. Case in point down in the bottom right.
And this is the right shot, of course. He'd already made a red on the break.
Yellow ball's in play.
With the red sitting over the bottom left-hand pocket as we look. It was just a matter of covering this right one. And he owns the bottom half of the table. And of course, the one bad red that he has, this one here, well, Lee has got a problem because the only ball he can hit is the yellow that is protecting it.
30 seconds.
You just saw the nap roll there, just affect that enough to keep it out of the center pocket. Just watch this, just curls at the very end there, enough to keep it out. Something these players have to allow for when going across the nap of the table, just as a snooker player would.
Well, this is decision time now, because obviously he doesn't have to go game here. But if he does, he's got to remove one of these bottom reds, and he's going to do so. And this looks good. This looks very good. That was the one awkward ball, which is perfectly on. And you've got to fancy him, Jim, to take these out from here. Well, once again, a bit of a slack positional shot there.
Needed to be straighter. As you can see, just the wrong angle to keep the cue ball on the right-hand side of the table as we look.
And he's not played it well again.
Total snooker.
Self-imposed. Well, it's not the worst result. If anything, he's put a yellow, the one nearest the black, to a much more awkward position in terms of being available.
Well, it's not the best shot in the world. Obviously, the shot he played before it was very poor, but he's actually positioned that red where it only kind of goes into the middle pocket, and Lee will be relieved, really, just to be back at the table once again for another chance where he shouldn't have got one. Well, what can you say about that, Jim? I mean, not only has he fell on this one bad yellow, but he's got the angle to stun over for these other two bad yellows, which will have to go into the same pocket. Once again, perfectly played there by Lee. And this really, Jim, is going to be a steal if he gets it.
But the story of this match so far has not really been a case of wins as much as losses. Still a lot of work to do. The one yellow nearest the bottom right corner is the one that Lee has to try and land on eventually. We'd like to do that sooner than later.
Very well played. He was virtually straight, but just had a slight angle. He had to force that shot. Lots of stun inside.
If Lee can finish with the last two yellows in the 8-ball here, he will have replied to Craig Reynolds' best frame in the preceding one with arguably one of his.
Sign of confidence there, Jim.
Eight to the bottom left corner.
Come on, Craig. Come on.
He can't believe it. How big that shot might be.
I was just going to say, Jim, we've seen some horrendous misses, but that is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There's just no excuse whatsoever for that.
Well, if the alarm bells weren't ringing before, they must certainly be now.
Well, how many times have we said it, Jim? How a shot like that can really turn a match. And it can only give Craig confidence. He's been fortunate where the black has actually finished on the rail, and we have already seen Craig miss a black like this.
Very similar to this, to the top left.
And I think he knows it. He really does have to concentrate on this shot. It isn't a hard shot, but it is missable.
Desperately needed that 8-ball, and Craig Reynolds has got it. He's won 2 frames on the spin for the first time in this match, and he knows he was let off the hook, and in a big way. 6 frames to 4 now. Lee Kendall leads Craig Reynolds. But the story of that one, once again, not so much a win as a loss for Lee Kendall. But in the end, it took a good 8-ball from Craig Reynolds and no movement whatsoever. A steady cue arm. So Lee Kendall's going to be breaking off here. Frame 11 in a possible 17. He's opened the door slightly for Craig Reynolds.
11th frame, Lee Kendall to break, leading 6
And
frames
now
to 4.
it's up to him to slam it shut.
Well, it's a good break this time, Jim. A very good break.
Yellow and red balls potted.
And it goes without saying,
Yellow balls in
he will
play.
definitely take the yellows, because just look where the black has finished. It's very rare we see the black finish in the top part of the table there. It's took a kick off one of the reds. But Lee will definitely take the yellows.
Red balls in play.
So it's reds in play for Craig Reynolds.
Just looking at the match in general, Jim, I was just wondering, you know, I can't really remember seeing a match with so many misses. And I'm sure now we're going to see the deliberate foul, Jim. We're going to play the red across, pot the yellow and leave the red over the pocket.
Foul.
The shot. Now, although he's played this shot, if we look very carefully, we can see that there is a gap, obviously, between the red next to the black. And what Lee can try and do is if he can develop these 2 yellows into the open, which he's now trying to do. He's been a little unlucky. What he can actually do is he pots this yellow, he can remove the offending red. And that way, he's got a game shot. And that's what he's tried to do there. He hasn't quite finished perfect on it. So if he is going to go for the finish, he may elect to come down the table, which is what he's doing.
How important is this visit for Lee Kendall?
Well, I think it's one of these now where he feels like he's got to have an immediate response. So what he's decided to do is going for the game, which he didn't have to, remember, because what he could have done, he could have put the red that's near the black, he could have put it over the pocket and just protected the table at that part. But what he's decided to do is go game.
He's not played the best positional shot right there. Going to need a good pot to that corner pocket.
He is a little bit out of touch in this match, you know, compared to how we have seen him play in past years, Jim. He's just, he's not played at his best.
30 seconds.
Great shot. See, what the important thing about this clearance is, what he needs to do is when he gets down to this last yellow that's near the black, he needs to be more or less straight behind it. And the reason for that is because when he plays it off the red, he needs to hit it exactly right.
Here we go, Keith. Yellow in the top bag, off the red to free the pocket for the black.
And he looks just about perfect, really. Well, I have to be honest there, Jim. I thought he played the finish as best he could. And he had the cue ball just about right, because had it come off the red, obviously the cue ball was coming into position for the black. He's in a little bit of trouble now. I think we may just see the old Eve Ho here.
How the tables have turned in this quarterfinal. Craig Reynolds with an opportunity to pull back to 6 frames to 5 behind. At one stage, he trailed 4-1.
This is a great shot. That is a great shot. Because I was just looking and thinking, well, this ball on the side rail is going to be his one big problem. And if he is going to pot it into the top pocket, he needs the cue ball right behind it. This is the big shot.
Looks like a different player now than he did at the outset. This 8. And Craig Reynolds is mounting a comeback of monumental proportions here against Lee Kendall. From 6-2 down, he's pulled back to 6-5 now. I'll bet our guests in the studio, as well as Jonathan, have something to say about this.
We certainly do, Jim. I mean, really amazing, isn't it? 6-2 down, and he came out firing on all cylinders there, Tony. And although it's Lee that's made the mistakes, so let's Craig back in, isn't it?
That's right. Lee Kendall, to me, is struggling very, very hard with his game. And Craig Reynolds just seems to have picked up a touch on what he was performing earlier.
It is closer now. We'd almost written Craig off. Can we say that now maybe he's got a possibility now?
Well, he's definitely back at the races, you know what I mean? It's 6-5 now, you know, and to me, it's anybody's game. And if anyone's going to win it, I think Craig's got the momentum.
All right, well, it's a funny old game. Let's get back to it.
Funny old game to be sure, Jonathan. Right now, Lee Kendall is not seeing the funny side of this game at all.
Red ball potted.
Remember I was saying before, Jim, Al, that when you're playing well sometimes and Lady looks with you, it just seems to me how the tables may have turned here a little bit, because all of a sudden Lee's playing some bad shots, Craig's making some good finishes, he's making the balls on the break now. And it has to be said, these yellows are very gettable.
Very soon, if not already, it's gut check time for Lee Kendall.
He's played this badly though, once again. He seems to just not got his positional touch with the table right through the match.
Yes, the positional aspects of Craig's game, more times than not, have eluded him.
So the yellows are very well situated here. And if he's got any bad ball, it's just this one just below the 3 reds. This is the one bad yellow he has. If he can just eliminate that, the finish is quite easy. And he tried to get on it that last shot. That's what he was trying to do. Okay, now he may elect to take it this shot. He has to be a little bit careful with the cue ball, but I think he may take it. The nice thing is with the last yellow near the bottom pocket is he only has to roll it. He doesn't have to worry too much about the cue ball here. He just has to make sure he gets the pot.
He looks a different player right now, Keith. You can tell he's starting to fancy this. He's not made life easy for himself here.
He's just not quite got the pace of the table, Jim.
Great recovery shot. Craig Reynolds now has leveled accounts with Lee Kendall. He's won the last 4 frames on the trot, effectively reducing this match to a best of 5. First player to 9 will be through to the semifinals. Welcome again to the televised stages here at the Stackus Hotel in Blackpool for the Embassy Whirlpool Championships of 1998.
13th frame, Lee Kendall to break, 6 frames all.
I'll tell you what, Lee Kendall's in trouble now. And like I was saying before, the luck of the breaks has turned. He's made a ball, but a terrible situation where the cue ball's finished. And there it's took a kiss, and he's lucky the cue ball stayed on the table. And it's a little bit of a mess up here near this corner pocket.
Red ball's in play.
Now he's played the snooker, but have to be careful there, Jim, because what you have to do, of course, in these rules is you have to make contact with the ball first and then a cushion.
Well, that duly accomplished. Nothing more than containment here. The only escape, should Craig decide to choose it, is that side cushion he was just looking at, and the yellow next to the red.
He doesn't actually have to attempt any shot if he doesn't want. He may just touch the cue ball.
Well, there was a gap there.
Yeah, there was.
Didn't look at, certainly from our commentary position. Either way, the escape negotiated. Lee Kendall must be all at sea, certainly in his mind right now, to be able to pull that back together, rope in all the positive thoughts that he can derive from this one,
30 seconds.
and prepare for the task now. Has to be very difficult.
And that's a pretty good shot. He's trying to play the snooker. Not quite sure if he can get through to this yellow. What he's actually done there, Jim, as well, is he's developed the bad red and put it over the centre pocket. And the nice thing about that is, of course, he can play off that and try and disturb this little cluster at the top. And Craig's also played a very similar shot. He's played onto the yellow, moved the red out the way, and of course that yellow now pots. And when he pots that yellow, he can develop the other yellow and the black at the same time. So they've both got a chance of game.
Lee just having a quick look at the plant.
This is a very aggressive shot he's taking on here.
30 seconds.
Well, it's a pretty good shot. I'm not sure if he's played to cover the pocket or not there, Jim. The thing is, he's kind of thrown the gauntlet here to Craig a little bit, because actually Craig can actually make an out here. All these yellows will pot, although be it they're not easy. And I think Lee maybe took a chance. But the thing is now, Craig's got his tail up.
And how? The finish on for Reynolds. And what's more, he started to knock in some real pressure balls. And that certainly has gone a long ways to reestablish some of the flagging confidence from the outset of this match that he must have been experiencing.
This is a great shot. This is a great shot. The problem with this ball is that they only go into the corner pocket, and he's perfect on it.
Played with a lot of left-hand side, swinging the cue ball around the top cushion.
He's still got a bit of work to do, though, Jim, because obviously he's got the ball on the side rail. But if we take a look where the black is, it isn't ideally situated. It won't go into either of the top pockets. Be very interesting to see how he plays this one.
Obviously no pocket there.
Well, this is a crazy shot. Couldn't understand this shot. Not played it very well. May see him take on a double here, actually, Jim.
Had no choice. He had to throw caution to the wind, and Now Lee Kendall with all the reds in relatively potable areas of the table. But he's lost the last 4 frames. So there's more than just potting these reds that Lee has to contend with.
Well, it has to be said, Jim, really, that it is a pretty basic finish. And I think what Lee's doing, he's just taking his time on every single shot because he doesn't want to make another mistake. He's made so many and he realizes that. He's not come perfect on this, to be fair. He can't run it through. Well, he can, but he'd have to cannon the yellow, so he may try and stun it out the other side of the yellow. No, he's elected to go this way. He's not taking any chances now. I mean, the only thing that can go wrong is when you've got your last ball right over the pocket, it's never that easy to get position off it because it may just catch the round of the jaw. So he's still got to get good position on the black ball. He's a long way from it. So although you fully expect him to get on the black, no problem, it can always go wrong.
You mean like that?
Well, it isn't ideal. Isn't ideal, Jim.
Much more difficult shot than he would have liked here. Oh, that's a great shot from Lee Kendall. Terrific pot, and just what the doctor ordered, I'm sure. Lee Kendall has stopped the rot and won a huge frame for his side. He leads Craig Reynolds now 7 frames to 6 in this best of 17 quarterfinal.
14th frame, Craig Reynolds to break, trailing by 7 frames to 6. Foul.
Well, that's the last thing Craig wanted to do.
Replacing the break cue. And I'm sure wondering, as we see the break again, how long he's going to be spending in his chair on this instance. The scene is set right now for Lee Kendall. He just won an enormous frame in the last one, stopping the comeback from Craig Reynolds dead in its tracks. This visit, for me, could prove the difference between winning and losing.
Red ball's in play.
Well, there isn't really much of a problem here. The reds were the better suit, and the only bad ball he's got is on the bottom rail, and this is the one he's going to remove now. Well, that's about the worst place it could have gone, Jim, I think. He's actually overcut it slightly there. You can see the ball just come away from the cushion slightly. He can still get this into the middle pocket, but it isn't ideal position.
Be delighted with that result. It looks like the 8-ball will pass to the bottom left corner as we look, and we just see that fine clip into the middle pocket again from Lee Kendall. And the 8, if it does pass, and it does look like it from our overhead perspective, so he wants to get the cue ball back into the area that it is now, just slightly further left.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Good response from Lee here.
This pocket, if memory serves me correctly, has not been kind to Lee Kendall. No danger this time, though. 8 safely deposited. Lee Kendall is just 1 frame away from a place in the semi-final. He leads Craig Reynolds now by 8 frames to 6.
15th frame, Lee Kendall to break, leading 8 frames to 6.
If Lee Kendall has his wish, the only time Craig Reynolds will be getting out of the chair will be to offer his hand in congratulations.
Red ball potted.
Just 1 frame away from the semi-finals in the most prestigious event on the pool calendar's year.
Well, I think just taking a quick look at these, I think he may go yellows here. He hasn't really got too many problems. He's actually going to go reds. Now, it's a little surprising because he has got 1 offending red, which is the one up here near the left-hand pocket, and this is the one he's going to try and get on after potting this red. So I was a little bit surprised there. He's got 2 options here, basically. He can either try and just drop behind it, take the red into the same pocket, the right-hand top pocket as we look, or he can try and cannon it and develop it. Of course, the only danger with that is you're not sure where the red's going to go and you're not sure where the cue ball's going to go. And he's chose to try and develop it, and like I was saying,
Situation hasn't changed much, really, Keith. It still goes to the top right corner as we look, but now position has to be a lot more precise. He's a little unlucky there.
He's a little unlucky, but the thing is, you're relying on luck, Jim. You're relying on a good kiss. I mean, sometimes you can play cannons and you're about 90-95% sure where it's going to go, but in that particular case, he wasn't. Let's try to get on it once again. And basically, Jim, he's running out of reds. Now, what he's actually going to do here, Jim, he can actually play this because the white will actually hit the yellow, so he can't go in off. What about that? That was a great ball.
Possibly the best shot in recent memory from Lee Kendall. And if that wasn't, the next one might be. Because his job is not any easier.
For a shot. How this game has changed from 6-all.
I can't even begin to tell you how difficult that shot was. Played with slow drag and left-hand side. And now, just bump the red into the middle pocket, natural angle to finish on the 8-ball. And when it came time to dig deep, the test of character has been passed with flying colors from Lee Kendall. The 8's down, and Lee Kendall has disposed of a very game Craig Reynolds. The scoreline in the end will read 9-6 to Kendall, but how different it could have been if not for Lee Kendall pulling it all together when it counted most.